Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. My name is Seb Sternik, and I'm joined by sports journalist and, can I say, a depressed Chelsea fan at the moment, Alexandra Pereira, or a happy Chelsea fan? Because let's begin with the first topic: Chelsea women in the Women's Champions League semi-final. It's going to be over 35,000 fans at Stamford Bridge. But my question to you, Alexandra, is: has this fixture gone under the radar a little bit? I mean, if you ask the random football fan on the street, do you know about Chelsea reaching the Women's Champions League semi-final? I reckon most of them won't know that. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think just generally, like the Women's Champions League isn't pushed as well as the men's, but also I think there are other things that come into play with that. Obviously, DAZN own the rights to show the Women's Champions League, so it was only very late in the game that TNT came in and brokered a deal with DAZN to be able to show one game per match day. And obviously, if you don't have TNT, it's you're not really going to see it. And I think for those group stages, they didn't really advertise what games they were showing, but it was good to see during half time of the game on Tuesday that they did in fact show like a promo for Chelsea v Barcelona for tomorrow's game. It should be a good game, and I just want to say a massive shout out to Carly Telford and the marketing team at Chelsea Women. They've pushed really, really hard to get the game to be a sellout. It's what the players deserve. It's what Emma Hayes deserves. And I think last time I saw it was between 500 to 800 tickets left to be sold. So hopefully by the time this comes out, we'll be a sellout crowd. And I think it'll be something so amazing and so special to send off Emma Hayes with a sellout crowd for a massive, massive game in the Champions League, and potentially seeing Chelsea women get to that final in Bilbao.
Let me tell you, Alex, a lot of people won't really know the history between Barcelona and Chelsea in the women's game, right? So back in 2021, correct me if I'm wrong, Chelsea and Barcelona met in the final, and it was Barca who won 4-0. And then last year, they met in the semi-final of the Women's Champions League, and again, Barcelona picked up the victory 2-1. Now, obviously, when these two sides met in the first leg of this semi-final, Chelsea did something extraordinary. They went to Spain and they beat them 1-0, which is something that nobody had done for the last 5 years.
Yeah,
That is an incredible achievement, isn't it?
yeah, it
And
really
I
is.
don't think Barcelona had a single shot on target.
Yeah, it's also the first time an English side has won the first leg of the Women's Champions League, so that's massive as well. For Chelsea to put in that performance, to win away from home 1-0, Erin Cuthbert banger in the 40th minute, like, especially considering, it's away in Barcelona, 12:30 kickoff. It's nice of them to experience that because we had to experience that last season, the first leg. And I was sitting there watching the game with my sister, and I was like, got to 5 minutes. I was like, okay, cool, we haven't conceded. That's good. And then it got to 15 minutes. I was like, this is nervous because obviously in the reversal of this last year at the Bridge, we conceded in the third minute to a Caroline Graham Hansen goal, which was actually a wonderful goal. And like after that, Barcelona really stepped it up. Lucy Bronze made like a goal line clearance, I think. Wrighton was unlucky to be called offside for the equaliser. So there are a lot of things, that kind of came into play. But for Chelsea to go to Barcelona, get the win, I mean, it wasn't the easiest of watches because obviously Chelsea went in at half time, 1-0 up, and you're thinking, this is great. Then Barca get awarded a penalty in, the 50th minute, and it goes to VAR. But that was, I think, this is one thing. Like VAR, when used correctly, is a great thing. But also, because it's so new in the women's game, I think the referee forgot that she had the privilege of having VAR because I think one of the Chelsea players was like, "Is this not going to be checked by VAR?" And then obviously in the women's game it is going to be a little bit slower. It took about 2 to 3 minutes to come to the decision, and then the decision was no penalty. But I think what was really most impressive was just the all round performance from the whole team. It wasn't like one player was playing for themselves; they were playing as a team. And like, I think Hannah Hampton didn't really have to do much. I think she made one save, if that, in like the 97th minute, and it wasn't even that like big a save. So it's pretty good performance. Jess Carter deservedly player of the match. Putting a real performance, and it's a testament to this Chelsea side, given losing losing your premium striker in Sam Kerr in January, and then a month later losing your backup striker in Mia Fischel, both to ACLs. Like, it's not an easy thing to be like, oh, where are the goals coming from? You can't always rely on Lauren James to be that goal scoring output. And it's nice to see the likes of Erin Cuthbert, Myra Ramirez, everyone sort of chipping in. But I think Myra Ramirez's performance also went a little bit under the radar. She was, having that proper centre forward hold up play, and she's just a joy to watch, really.
Alex, you're a Chelsea fan, right? And let's face it, for the men, it's been really crap for the last couple of years. So how nice for a Chelsea fan is it to have at least the women's side who are winning well and doing really, really, doing really, really well? And what does that say about the men and the fact that they get so much money poured into the male setup and they have been absolutely crap?
I think it's an interesting aspect, because obviously it's a lot not easier for the women, but they are a lot more settled. Emma Hayes is, before this season, had been there 12 years, and obviously at the end of the season she's departing. So I think with the men's team, there's not been a lot of stability, and that can really be detrimental to a side. The women's team, although they've added players in, they've kind of gone about it the right way in terms of having youth and experience, whereas the men's team have sort of gone the other way, where they've just gone youth and like who they think will be potential stars, where perhaps you got to have a bit more of a balance. And I think, I know a lot of people have slagged off Pochettino and this and that, but I do think perhaps he's not the right manager long term. But I think this young group of individuals, of trying to get them to gel together and kind of be cohesive and be a team, is probably the right manager for it. But he obviously needs more than a season, because, to be honest, like, Potter tried it, but like, Potter was always just kind of viewed as a nice guy and this and that. But like, you could just tell, like, he lost the players quite quickly. Whereas, like, at least with Pochettino, like, Malagusto and Cole Palmer have said, he's sort of been instrumental to my development and this, and I always want to play for the manager. And I think that's quite telling. Like, Potter didn't really have that last season. But I'd also like to see Poch stay, because he's the fifth manager we've had since the new owners have taken over. And I think, yes, I know one guy was there for one game, and Lampard came back as interim, and there's a lot of moving parts with it. But for Chelsea to sort of get back to winning ways and be successful, they need to kind of not abide by the old regime of where they hire and fire, because it makes it hard. Firstly, it makes it hard for the players to be able to get stability, and number two, for the fans, it makes it hard to kind of invest in the manager and kind of want to back them if they know they're just going to be there for one season and then gone.
I'm looking at some of these stats, and obviously I hear you out about Pochettino, but what about this, right? 13 wins from 32 Premier League games so far this season, right? Conceded 57 goals in the Premier League, more than Everton, more than Palace, more than the likes of Fulham. Just 5 wins away from home. As a Chelsea fan, right? You follow Chelsea fans a lot better than me. What is the feeling in the Chelsea community now? Would you say most fans are behind him, want him to stay, or most would rather see him gone and replaced with somebody else?
I think it's kind of split. There are some who say get him out, get him sacked right now. And I just think, you could sack him and it won't change anything. And I know some people say, oh, but it will. Like, they say, look at Palace and they've had a new manager bounce and this and that. I was like, okay, but it's very different. Palace, no offense to Palace, they're a decent side, but there's no pressure on them really to kind of be challenging for trophies. It's nice. Like when they got to the FA Cup semi-final in 2022, it was nice, but no one expected them to go on and do that. Like I think, to my knowledge, they've not won a trophy in their history, so literally there's no pressure on them. Whereas Chelsea, up until recently, over the past 20 years or so, they've been the most successful English side. And I know a lot of people go, well, what about City? What about this one? But you look at the trophies Chelsea have won over the past 20 years, and it's pretty much every trophy imaginable. So for them to kind of get back to winning ways, it's going to take some time. And unfortunately, people aren't willing to give managers time these days. And people are never willing to call out some players who are like underperforming. Like some of them use it, oh, it's an excuse, they're young, they're this. But some of them, like, I was very like critical of Raheem Sterling like last season. I said, oh, okay, like let's see him this season under Pochettino. And whether it's Tuchel in charge, Potter, Pochettino, like Sterling's just like making poor decisions. Like I think there was a clip that went viral of Sterling where he's sitting down with someone and he goes, if I'm in a one-on-one situation and there's a pass on, I'm going to pass it. And I think 3 times this season he's been in those types of situations. Like the most glaringly obvious one was against Wolves, and Cole Palmer was free and he didn't pass the ball, and then got saved by the keeper, and then we end up losing that match. Did it against Villa. So it's just, it's one of those. I think part of the problem is with having a young side, even if there's like, take the penalty gate incident against Everton, and when it all kicked off and they were all arguing, it obviously, like, managers don't necessarily have to say it to the press or whatever who the penalty taker is, but if they've said it behind closed doors and the players know, and they've then still gone against that, like, it's one of those where you kind of feel like obviously they're not going to get berated out in public, but you're going to get these sort of things with a young side. And I don't know if perhaps, I know Jose Mourinho is like very touted to potentially be the next Chelsea manager. I can honestly say, like, for nostalgia purposes, it's great, but looking at the squad, like Mourinho is one who predominantly, doesn't tend to develop youth. Like you just look at him in his first couple of stints at Chelsea, didn't really pick up many players from the academy. So I think that would be a ticking time bomb, if I'm being honest.
I'm looking at some of these potential contenders. I'm on odds checker. I'm looking who the favourites are for the Chelsea job. I'm with you. I'd like to see Pochettino stay. I think he's a top manager. And if you give him a little bit more time, I think he'll take you places so I think he'll take you back to at least contending for the title within time. I think he could do that. But I'm looking at the odds. Roberto De Zerbi, the number 1 favourite at the moment, according to the bookmakers. Ruben Amorim, who was obviously linked with Liverpool and West Ham for a little bit. Jose Mourinho 3rd. Thomas Tuchel 4th. Those are the kind of names that you were rooming with. What would you make of somebody like Roberto De Zerbi? He's the favourite. Would Chelsea fans like him? Another Brighton man in charge?
I think we've got to get over this fetish with Brighton. I'm tired of it. Like we took the manager, whatever. We took Cucurella, we took Caicedo, we took Sanchez, we took their recruitment department. Like enough's enough, man. Like look at De Zerbi this season. Yeah, you can say he's got injuries, this thing and that thing, but if injuries aren't an excuse for Chelsea, they can't be an excuse for Brighton. I'm sorry. I also saw or noticed that De Zerbi kind of set his team up similarly to Pep when they played Man City, only to get clapped 4-0 by City. So it's just kind of like, if De Zerbi is the answer, what is the question? Because I don't see us progressing if we do get De Zerbi. In fact, I think we'll go backwards. And I understand he's worked with certain players like Mudryk before, and he's got like a relationship with him. But I just can see he's got elements of, like, in terms of toxicity, of Mourinho and Tuchel that will not bode well with the players. And I just think he seems like the type of person who will lose a dressing room pretty quickly.
I want to throw one out there. If Emma Hayes wasn't going to the USA national team, how do you think that Chelsea would consider her as a replacement for Pochettino? Possibly, if she wasn't, hypothetical question, I know, if she wasn't going to the USA women's national team, would Todd Bowley and the people above consider her for the main role of the men's side?
Do you know what? When Lampard was first in charge of Chelsea and then he got sacked, I remember having this conversation with another Chelsea fan on Twitter, and I said, "Oh, Lampard before he left, when he wasn't doing so well, should have had a chat with Emma Hayes because obviously she's been in that sort of situation. She kind of knows she can offer advice." And then obviously when he got sacked, I said, just let Emma Hayes be interim man, let her be interim manager, because if anyone's ever watched the six-part DAZN documentary with Chelsea women, if not, it's a really good watch. Like, she's not afraid to call players out for being poor, and like she will say, I won't quote it verbatim because there's a lot of swearing in it, but she goes like, "Get better, or I'll get someone else in." And
You can swear if you want.
I think there needs to be sort of a tough love approach for the men's team now, because a lot of them, unfortunately, are on long contracts. Perhaps not as much money as you think they would be, but they're on long contracts, and there's not really a danger of them being dropped. I think, if they start, well, because some of them, bar Cole Palmer, obviously, have been performing okay, but not great. I think they should start finding the players, because if you take away their paycheck or you take a little bit of their money away, that might, like, I don't know how to describe it, but it might kick him into gear and be like, "Oh, do you know what? Like, I gotta get it together." Because playing for Chelsea is a privilege. There are so many players who would like to play for Chelsea who don't get the chance, either because they're not considered or they're not good enough. Like, even academy players realise the privilege they have. So it's, you've got to take into account that if Chelsea are coming after you, it's because they want you and they know you're good enough. So you need to show not only to yourself and your family, you have to show to the fans why we should back you and why we should get behind you. So I think, like, similar to what they did with Kepa in 2019 after Sarrigate, where he refused to be subbed off in the Carabao Cup final and he got fined his wages and the wages went to the foundation. I think you should start finding players, if they mess up in training, if they do something wrong in a game, and then obviously all the money that's made in fines or whatever over the season, donate it to the foundation, or donate it into grassroots football, so that then the money can be put back into something wisely, because like some of these players are too lax in the way they think and the way they approach things. They need some tough love and they need to realise this is Chelsea. Wake up, you can't be acting like this. There's a certain way to act as a player at Chelsea, and if you're not meeting those standards, you should either get dropped, or if you're constantly messing up in like training or in games, you should get fined. That's just my personal opinion.
Let's stick on the football manager topic, because I want to move clubs at the moment and go to Man United. Erik ten Hag, believe it or not, snubbed 3 journalists recently. The journalists from The Sun, from The Mirror, and the Manchester Evening News. He was not happy with the way that they covered the reaction to the win over Coventry City. He called their coverage as embarrassing and a disgrace. I don't know about you, but I thought Man United's performance was a bit embarrassing and a disgrace. Going down, they were 3-0 up, obviously, against Coventry. Managed somehow to squander that lead and scraped through on penalties. What do you make of Erik ten Hag snubbing those journalists? Is he being a bit soft?
I think Erik ten Hag is a bit of a joke, to be honest. Like, you've come to England. I remember when they announced ten Hag was coming to England, and Sky Sports said, "Oh, he's a young, exciting manager." At the time, he was 52. Tuchel was 47. I'm like, this does not make sense. You can't be a young, exciting manager if you're older than one of the managers in the league. But anyway, I think Ten Hag very much has throw the toys out the pram syndrome. Like, no, if he doesn't like something, he always kicks up a fuss. And I think he needs to realise, that the Premier League is not the Eredivisie. Like, Ajax are not United. United are used to sort of being in and around, Champions League positions, sort of up there and above sometimes, with trophies, challenging for trophies. And I think, like you said, you had a 3-0 lead against a championship side chasing promotion. You were 3-0 up, squandered that, were saved by a dodgy offside call, and then won on penalties and had someone like Anthony giving it the big un. And he should really pipe down because he's not scored a goal in the Premier League this season. It's always the ones who do nothing that talk the loudest, and he is one of those. I'm just like, you're a £100 million fidget spinner at the end of the day. Like no one likes you that much, really. Like you only came to United because you were coach under Ten Hag at Ajax. Like you need to pipe down and show some humility. Because to be honest, if Coventry get to the Prem next season, they'll defo give United a run for their money. Right at the minute, like Ten Hag talks a lot considering, he bottled the lead against Chelsea and ended up losing 4-3. He's, talked a lot about being able to challenge against City and how he can't do that because he didn't have the perfect team. The only time he did that was like last season when they won, I think 2-1, or half of those players aren't even at United anymore. So his stories never make any sense. So I'm just like, at this point, just show some humility, be quiet, and I can understand sort of not wanting to talk to the Sun because they are a deplorable newspaper, but like the Manchester Evening News and the other one, like it's fair game if they ask questions. But also, I think both Manchester United managers, so him and the women's manager, Mark Skinner, although I think Skinner's now signed a new contract extension, potentially at risk because you can't constantly be like calling out other people and not taking accountability for your actions. And it's just like United this season, like to finish bottom of a Champions League group that contained Copenhagen and Galatasaray is laughable. Like you can say, oh yeah, Newcastle finished bottom of their group, but they had, PSG.
Group of death.
They had PSG, Milan, and Dortmund, and those are three very good sides. And like Milan ended up losing to Roma in the quarters of Europa. But by United, who are a team that tend to go far, not all the way in European competitions, but they at least get out the group stages. Because obviously next season the Champions League format changes. So obviously United being a team that 9 times out of 10, maybe I'm giving them too much credit, will get out the group. That really hurt the coefficient. And then obviously how do you recover as Ten Hag losing to the likes of Copenhagen and Galatasaray? I understand Bayern Munich because they are a good side, but Galatasaray and Copenhagen, and you finish bottom of the group. And yeah, all United fans are going, oh, Højlund scored 5 goals in the Champions League and he's the top goal scorer. It means nothing if you don't win the trophy at the end of the day. Like, who cares if you're the top goal scorer in the group stages if you're not going to go on to win the trophy?
Honestly, my dad made me laugh the other day because we were watching the press conference from Erik Ten Hag, and he keeps saying the same thing. All part of the process, all part of the process. And my dad's going, how long is this process? Because he's been saying that since he's arrived at the club. He said, every press conference is everything's part of the process. And, there's only five or six games to go for Man United, and they're still working on something, clearly. But I'm just looking at this side, this Man United team. I mean, they need a rebuild everywhere, don't they? I mean, I'm looking at the defense; it's horrific. The goalkeeping situation. Why they got rid of David De Gea, I will never know. I'm looking at this midfield; it looks shonky at best. Up front, obviously, they've got a bit of firepower in Højlund, fair enough, but Rashford is far from his peak. I don't know. I can see this Man United team. I'm looking at this Man United team, and if they finish 6th or 7th, I think that's probably where they should about finish. Looking at that squad.
it's interesting because obviously Ten Hag goes on, trust the process, trust this. We need to invest in the squad more. Since you've arrived in the Premier, you've invested 400 million into the squad. You invested 55 million to a midfielder and Mount, who spent majority of the season injured. Chelsea will thank you very much for the money, but at the end of the day, you've spent 55 million on a player who has not been fit for 95% of the season. Like, that's ridiculous. The way United go for players, is bizarre. The way they sell players as well, their selling policy is so bad. They sell their players for dirt cheap. And it's although Chelsea might not be having a good season or this or that, one thing they do well is they offload players for a decent amount of money. Hence why, Mount went to United for 55 mil. One of their academy players went for 2 mil somewhere. The difference is staggering. But it's Ten Hag, there's only so much you can say, trust the process, trust the process. And it's interesting because obviously before Ten Hag was appointed, Ralph Rangnick was in charge, and he kind of spelled out what needed to be done, and everyone started laughing at him. And guess what? No one's laughing now because he was 100% correct. And it's Ten Hag is it's obviously very different managing in the Eredivisie than it is managing in England. And at this point, if you haven't figured out how to, perhaps integrate more of the under 21s, etc., into the side, because your backline is aging as hell. You've got Varane, you've got so many aging players, and you spent what 40 mil or something on Casemiro at 30, and he's just he's just not doing the business that he was doing at Madrid. It also kind of shows the difference in levels, I suppose, between La Liga and the Prem. If he's constantly getting carded and red carded and stuff like that. So I think United, perhaps, which is what they don't do. I think Garnacho is the last sort of academy player they've integrated into the side. So it's perhaps look at your under 23 squad, or I'm not sure if Amad Diallo also played for the under 21s, but perhaps the answer lies within the youngsters, because even with Chelsea, they've got one of the best academies in England. They don't necessarily have to fork out big money for players in certain positions.
Absolutely. Alex, I took way too much of your time. Sorry about that. But thank you very much for joining me. And as a Chelsea fan, I wish you all the best for the semi-final against Barcelona. Hopefully the next time we're on, we'll be talking about the final against PSG or Lyon. We'll see. But for now, thank you, Alex, and we'll chat next time.
Chat soon.